Hi everyone, and welcome to Be Like Christ for our Bible study. Today, 2 Samuel chapter 17, free PDF on our website. There's some books available online for purchase. There's links to that down below. 2 Samuel 17, when did these events happen? We're talking about the reign of David in that time frame. That would be from approximately 1055 BC to 1015 BC, so about 1,050 years before Jesus was born. Characters. Our main characters here, we've got David. He's the second king over all of Israel and Judah. Absalom. This was David's rebellious, treacherous son who tried to steal the throne from his father, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this chapter. Ahithophel, he was a very wise counselor of Absalom's. He kind of left David, joined Absalom's side, and David sent a guy named Hushai back to Jerusalem to be kind of his spy, his inside man, and also to thwart the wise counsel of Ahithophel. We're also going to talk about Zadok and Abiathar. These were the priests of God who were in Jerusalem. They were allies of David, and they cared for the Ark of the Covenant. Ahimaaz was the son of Zadok, the priest, and then Jonathan was the son of Abiathar, the priest. Now you'll remember that David had to flee Jerusalem to escape Absalom during the coup that he put together in Hebron. David fled from Jerusalem with all of his household. He went over the Mount of Olives. They then stopped at the Jordan River, and they waited for David's informants in the city of Jerusalem to tell them what they should do. When they finally heard back from the informants told them to flee across the Jordan River because Absalom was going to try to kill David, and that's exactly what they did. They went across the Jordan River and they went up to a place called Mahanaim, which is at the top of the territory of Gad on the eastern side of the Jordan River. Jonathan and Ahimaaz, the sons of these priests, they are going to run a message to David in this chapter to give him some inside information. And they were at a place called Enrogel, waiting to receive that message. Enrogel is very close to Jerusalem. It's no more than a mile to the south. So it's not on the map, but just know it's right underneath Jerusalem. Didn't have room to fit it in there. Okay, two sections to cover in this chapter. The first one, verses 1 through 14, Hushai counters the counsel of Ahithophel. After David left Jerusalem, he was kind of on the run. Ahithophel counseled Absalom to send 12,000 men after David to kill him right away, to get him off of the table. That way Absalom had no competitors to the throne. Now, that advice seemed pretty good to Absalom, but he wanted to hear from Hushai before he made any decisions. Now, Hushai argued against Ahithophel. Remember, David had sent him back into the city to counter Ahithophel's wise counsel. So he's really secretly trying to sabotage Absalom here when he gives this advice. So Hushai argued against Ahithophel. He reminded Absalom that David was a very cunning warrior and that capturing him would be a lot harder than just sending a bunch of men into his camp, and because David was smarter than that. He wasn't going to hang out in the camp with everybody else, right? Instead, Hushai advised Absalom to unite all of Israel under his leadership. And then, when the whole of the nation was loyal to him, he could expose David wherever he was hiding and surround him, and the former king would have nowhere to escape, and then, all of Israel could come against David and finish him off. Absalom and his other advisors agreed that Hushai's counsel was better than that of Ahithophel's. And the text tells us this. The reason that they concluded that wasn't just that, they were thinking that on their own, but God had a hand in this. It says, quote, "For the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel so that the Lord might bring harm upon Absalom." So God was behind Absalom taking this advice that was really coming from his saboteur. Now that Hushai knows Absalom's next move, he has to inform David. And so that's what we're going to talk about in the second section, verses 15 through 29. Hushai secretly informs David of Absalom's plans. So Hushai sent secret messengers to Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, so that they could send word to David. Hushai advised David to cross the Jordan River, right, to flee over the Jordan River and to move his camp to the east. Jonathan and Ahimaaz, the sons of the priests, they were waiting in Enrogel to carry this message, which was brought to them by a female servant. But the two couriers were spotted. They were trying to be sly, but they got spotted, and Absalom was informed, and he sent men to find them. So to evade discovery, Ahimaaz and Jonathan went to the house of an ally, a friend of David's, who hid them in a well and then covered the top of the well. This is a scene that's in like so many movies. I was recently watching the latest TV series of The Lord of the Rings, right? And they have this scene, they hide in the well until the enemies go away. All the good movie scenes pretty much just come from the Bible. So these two men, they hide in the well, and Absalom's men don't find them. And when Absalom's men left, the messengers went ahead and they continued their mission. They went on their way and found David and gave him the message. David and his household took the advice that they were given. They crossed the Jordan River. Now we're told that when Ahithophel learned that Absalom had rejected his counsel and gone with Hushai's instead, he took it really hard. This must have been a great shame to him. It says that he rode his donkey back to his house, set his affairs in order, and then he hanged himself. David made his way across the Jordan and up to Mahanaim, which we saw in our map section. And then after some time, Absalom gathered the army of Israel, and they crossed the Jordan in pursuit of David to try to finish him off. Now, we'll talk more about that and the battle that ensues in the next chapter, but that is 2 Samuel 17. Now for our application. This chapter gives us a great example of how God can shape the world to his will in non-miraculous and often unobservable ways. The text says this in verse 14, quote, "For the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, so that the Lord might bring harm upon Absalom." The wisest man in Israel was advising Absalom in this situation, but God made sure that his wise counsel wasn't followed. It wasn't heeded. God's hand it wasn't immediately observable to Hushai, to Ahithophel, and to Absalom. They thought that they were just coming to this conclusion on their own, deciding whose counsel was the best. But God's hand was very much present in this situation, even though they couldn't see it. And this decision to go with Hushai instead of Ahithophel was actually an answer to a prayer that David had prayed back in chapter 15, verse 31, where he prayed to God that Ahithophel's counsel would be ignored. And so this is the application for you. Keep in mind that God may be answering your prayers through his invisible work that's not immediately observable to you. There's a lot that God can be doing that we don't even realize he's doing. And so a lot of times we feel like, oh, God's not answering my prayers. He's not doing anything for me. I don't see any way that he's helping me. That doesn't mean he's not helping you, right? And texts like this show us that. There's a good quote from John Wesley that I'd like to end this Bible study with. Quote, "Be it observed, to the comfort of all that fear God, he turns all men's hearts as rivers of water. He stands in the congregation of the mighty, has an overruling hand in all counsels, and a negative voice in all resolves, and laughs at men's projects against his children."